So for whatever reason, we have two flagship level OnePlus releases in a single year. I think that might be the first time they've done that, but it asks more questions than it probably answers. However, one of those is, where does the Pixel 10 Pro XL stack up against this device? It has compromises in similar ways to the OnePlus 15. How do they compare? What's the better device? Yeah, let's get into it. If you love our content though, well, then how about hitting that subscribe button? We're so close to 400,000 subscribers, and every new person who joins helps us there. So come join the community, we'd love to have you. What's interesting to me right out the gate is actually how similar these two phones feel in the hand. The dimensions are eerily similar. They're not quite the same, but if you switch between the two, caseless specifically, they have really something in common, and it doesn't stop at those flat sides. There's a real assured thickness to the designs of both of these phones, and that is something that more Android devices out there I think should take heed of. I personally prefer the stealthy black finish of the OnePlus 15 over the 10 Pro XL's Moonstone version, which is still a striking colour in its own right, but that's all down to personal preference. There are some other options available, but for me, yeah, keep it plain. You're going to throw a case in this anyway, so it doesn't matter all that drastically. OnePlus has also switched from a 120Hz screen on their devices to a 165Hz OLED that, I'm going to be honest with you, has made little real-world difference to how fast or fluid the phone feels in my own experiences. It's not quite as high resolution, and it means some limitations that marginally holds this back at a low resolution. Yes, you can sort of see a dip when you compare directly to the Pixel 10 Pro XL screen. In isolation, I think it's plenty sharp, it gets ridiculously bright, and the tiny bezels on the sides do make up for that marginal resolution dip. I haven't felt disappointed, put it that way. I'm confused why the company did this though, as the extra bump in refresh rate is really minimal in terms of hardware evolution, and it's hard to discern which is the faster screen side by side, or even in isolation when you're using them. I think removing the alert slider though is one of those changes that feels really strange for such a fan favourite. I'm torn as the new Magic Cube key, I think it's called, has more usability options. Nothing major, just a few presets that will hopefully develop over time. For now, it does a bit more than the alert slider ever could without extra software. I would like to see Google make their own implementation of this, or add a similar programmable button. I can kind of hold with this OnePlus 15 to turn on the torch, but it's still pretty basic stuff at launch. I'm hoping this will develop over time, but it's not something that you should go and buy this phone over the 10 Pro XL for that specific reason. Conversely, I think you don't necessarily get any functional buttons, but a more functional accessory ecosystem with MagSafe, or as it's known as Pixel Snap, on the Pixel 10 Pro XL. OnePlus has avoided it again for another year, and it sticks with official magnet cases or a magnet case system to address this lack of in-body MagSafe. For me, it's a little bit disappointing, as yes, I think that now I've tasted it on an Android phone, I really want all of these top-tier flagship phones to start adding their own version of MagSafe, or whatever they want to call it, on their devices. The thing is, if you want all of the best internals on a modern smartphone, then look no further than the OnePlus 15. I think currently, at least at the time of this video going live, there's no other major phone maker having all of the top-tier Qualcomm chips on board. Yes, this is an absolute beast. It powers through anything I can think of doing on a modern smartphone, but that said, you do have a lot of overhead, and I think that's great if you care about it. All of the games that you expect to work will absolutely fly. Using local processing in applications like Cobalt.tools indicates just how far I think ahead that Qualcomm, or the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, is over the Tensor G5 processor. It can process video and photos almost instantly locally. There is no time where you'll necessarily see slowdowns when putting the OnePlus 15 through its paces, which I think I absolutely adore. It's not quite as rosy on the Pixel 10 Pro XL. It isn't bad, don't get me wrong. Some of the software tuning has really diminished or hid some of the software and hardware limitations, but yeah, sadly it just means that the Pixel 10 Pro XL is just not as fast in every single area, and that might be something that you care about with your smartphones. It's also worth noting that sadly I do think OnePlus has taken heed of Apple's disaster class design with liquid glass and added some of the more, I guess they're not the most heinous aspects, but some aspects to OxygenOS 16. I do think it detracts from what is an otherwise excellent return to form with the previous OxygenOS version. While, hey, there's no mistake, the Pixel 10 Pro XL may never be able to match the raw power and performance of the OnePlus 15, but it certainly surpasses it in the software department, at least from a day-to-day experience. Optimization is better, the visuals are more cohesive, and Google isn't trying to emulate Apple's iOS. If only OnePlus had just opted to lean more into Material 3 Expressive with OxygenOS 16, I think we wouldn't have such an annoying halfway house visual mismatch. That does diminish this experience somewhat. OnePlus has done a really great job with some performance-related optimizations once again, so anyone that does care about going and opening and closing 200 applications back to back will be thrilled with this phone. Personally, I think I will take what the Pixel offers in the day-to-day experience, as despite that significant performance gap, it sure feels fluid day to day. And that's not even mentioning the update rate that does favor Google's first-party Pixel hardware. We are on the cusp of another QPR release as of this video going live, which is likely going to leave the OnePlus 15 further behind in terms of software updates, and the phone won't receive as many monthly patches either, which is important, especially if you're going to hold onto a phone for a long period of time. But as I say, the software experience is pretty much to your own taste, effectively. It also boils down to software cadence and care for pure power or lesser support. Do you care about those? Which you prefer, again, is going to be ultimately up to you. I think, though, without sugarcoating things, the Pixel 10 Pro XL isn't even visible when we start to look at the longevity picture versus the OnePlus 15 battery life. It can't compete with the OnePlus 13, so with a frankly tablet-sized 7,300 mAh internal cell, the OnePlus 15 is in a league of its own. There are going to be people who can eke out 3 days for the OnePlus 15. I've managed it once. Charging takes me minutes as well, less than 40 to go from 0 to 100% with that 100 watt or 120 watt power brick depending on your region. It is very, very fast, and charging less frequently means the battery might not degrade quite as fast the longer you hold onto this device. I think where the Pixel 10 Pro XL could have the edge, though, is the addition of true Qi 2 charging. And this is still a one-day device. You can potentially get 2 days if you're a really, really light user. The best thing for me is that you can attach to magnetic charging systems, accessories, and all those epic MagSafe options I alluded to earlier. 45 watt charging comes with this device. It isn't exactly fast, but it is at least better than it has been in the past. Just don't expect multiple days of lifespan, and I think that should be enough for most people. So as for the camera systems, OnePlus no longer has the help of Hasselblad to tune their cameras. That is reserved for Oppo flagship devices, but the new image engine does still benefit from the previous work that they've done there, but I do think some of the hardware downgrades feel like cost-cutting measures in ways that do inhibit the OnePlus 15 a little bit compared to some other high-end phones. For stills, for me, the Pixel 10 Pro XL is a little bit more consistent, and it shows when you have any moving subjects in the frame. It's one of the key selling points of a Pixel for me. That said, even with a few changes to the setup, the OnePlus 15 has a fairly decent camera system. I've been really quite impressed with the zoom quality, especially at close range. In many cases for me, the OnePlus 15 is arguably sharper and more accurate than the Pixel 10 Pro XL, with less noise if the lighting isn't great, which I wasn't expecting ahead of time. In fact, colors are definitely more pleasing to my eye. You get warmer images with good contrast, and that trademark, or has been a trademark of the OnePlus 15 and OnePlus 13 camera systems with that previous Hasselblad tuning. The Pixel 10 Pro XL I do think is a little bit clinical in comparison. It is a toss-up again as to what you prefer, but credit where it's due, the OnePlus has a very, very solid setup and you won't be disappointed. As for video capabilities, they're pretty much par for the course on both of these devices, but you can do 8K video recording locally with the OnePlus 15, which again, I do think might be something that a lot of people like. The same can't be said of the Pixel 10 Pro XL, but you can do 8K 30 FPS with video boost, which is a nice touch, but it's, again, not the same as being able to locally process that. To kind of wrap up this thing, I think some of the choices made by OnePlus are a little bit flabbergasting over the last 6 or 7 months. This is a really good phone that doesn't build on its predecessor enough, in my opinion. However, the predecessor was one of the best phones of the previous 12 months, which is why it does feel like the company has fallen over the finish line rather than burst through it, that I expected them to. Meanwhile, the Pixel 10 Pro XL it's another good phone. It's not an excellent phone that has merits in other areas. It's almost universally disliked among hardware or hardcore Android fan circles because it can't do some of the things as well as the rest, the OnePlus 15 included. Those complaints, I think they're pretty much founded, given that Google wants to compete at the top end of the market, and we should be critical if they try to do so and don't necessarily land in every area. The OnePlus 15 is a timely reminder, though, that compromising after doing well is not something you can do in this space. It does some good changes, or makes some good changes, and some baffling changes are thrown in as well. The lack of Hasselblad tuning, I do think, hinders the camera experience a little bit, but nowhere near as much as some of the camera sensor changes. Feels like a turn or at least like a turn to make a phone that is aimed more at those who care about mobile gaming, and recent marketing campaigns definitely allude to that change quite heavily. Google's more holistic approach to smartphones, I don't think it's going to be for everyone, but the saving grace for OnePlus is that some of the missteps or misfires are accounted for by a lower start price. It's nudging closer to the Pixel, but I do think it is fairer for the overall package that you do get here. The good news is that the OnePlus 13, though, is now starting to get deep discounts, and Google has also dropped sales on the Pixel 10 a few times already since launch. These are just two phones that are almost diametrically opposed, but do come together for different reasons. They're held back in one way or another is what I'm trying to say here, but there is still enough decent on them to consider either option. Let me know which you prefer. I'm actually edging to the OnePlus at times, but then I'm worried about Oxygen OS because it was one of my favorite skins of the past year or so. It's a strange time to have the OnePlus 15 in the same year as its predecessor, but yeah, interesting times for both phone manufacturers. Cheers for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comment sections below, and as always, I'll speak to you later.